I think we'll kind of get started now to keep on time. I think this group that we have today for our education can definitely talk about a lot of great things, and I'm really excited to have them kind of discuss what their first year was as a head golf professional and kind of what went into it, some of the challenges, some of the successes. But I'd like to introduce kind of the first person to go. And just talk a little bit about themselves is John DiPilato. So go ahead, John.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for tuning in. So a few things. I'm now the director of golf at the Connecticut Golf Club up in Easton on the tail end of the Met section. A little about myself. I went to Coastal Carolina, PGM, graduated in 2013. I grew up in Westchester, New York, so a local kid in the Met section playing a bunch of junior golf. I worked at every type of facility in the area. I worked at Maplemore Public Golf Course in White Plains, Hudson Hills, Hudson National, Rockland Country Club, all before college and through college. When I graduated and got my Class A PGA membership, I got the job at Old Oaks as an assistant, as an entry-level assistant in the golf shop, cleaning carts. I stayed there for 10 years. The industry is obviously unique. Some places believe that assistants should jump around and get a bunch of different jobs. I think it depends on where you are. At Old Oaks, I was able to go from an entry level to first assistant, where I was teaching, running all the events in my last year, and had a really high responsibility. Also financially improved my job almost every year. So for me, I was able to polish all my skills at one facility over the course of 10 years. I definitely encourage, if you can do that at one facility under the right head professional, it's important to stay there and make sure you get the necessary skills to get the next job. If you feel like you should go somewhere else to get the proper skills, it's definitely good to kind of work at different places. And like I said, 10 years, always was looking at job postings, and Connecticut was one of those places that I went for and was fortunate enough to get the job. So here I am.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. Next, we'll hear from Joe Condomitti.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Joe Condomitti. I'm the head golf professional at Bonnie Briar Country Club, going into my second season here at the club. I'm looking forward to it. My background, similar to John's, I grew up in the New York area, Cornwall, New York. Played a lot of junior golf growing up, knew that I wanted to turn this game of golf into a career path. So I also attended Coastal Carolina University, went to school with John, as well as a bunch of other guys in the section. Brendan McHugh, who is the for Summit Golf Brands, Jeff Whitman, who I saw just kind of commented in the chat, who leads Golf Pro Deliver. We all went to school together, so developed a nice network when we were down there. When I came out of school, I internshipped at clubs throughout the Met section. A couple of clubs that I entered at were Delwood Country Club, which is now Paramount Country Club, Sunnydale Country Club. I actually interned for the Met PGA Junior Tour, so developed great relationships with all the staff members, Kelly Clayton, Dan Frankel, Caitlin Saban, and many more individuals. Clubs that, after my internships, first job that I got out of college was working at Sunnydale Country Club, working for Michael Breed and Mario Guerra. A couple other clubs that I worked at in the area were the Round Hill Club. I mentioned Sunnydale Country Club, the Tuxedo Club, most recently Tamarack Country Club, and then I worked at a couple other schools or a couple other clubs down south during the winter time. I worked for the Jim McLean Golf School, as well as Admiral's Cove and Old Palm Golf Club. So I took a much different route than John did. Like he mentioned, there's no right way to go about these. There's no right way to kind of go about this. One advantage that I had by working at all these different clubs is I got to see a lot of great golf professionals who had different strengths. I was able to work under those guys and take a little bit from each pro that I worked for, and I found that to be really helpful now that I'm kind of leading my own golf operation, and I could lean on Michael Breed. I could give him a call if I need some help, or I could call Tom Henderson if I need some help. Chris Muldoon from the Tuxedo Club, who's been instrumental from really helped me get this job, go through the interview process. So I could lean on lean on all those guys that I work from, and I find that to be a huge advantage. So a little bit of a different path than John, but like he mentioned, there's no one way to do it, and it all depends on yourself and the path that you want to choose. The only thing else I have to say before we jump over to Pat is we've got an itinerary planned for today, but feel free to jump in with some questions. Right, we'll kind of pause here and we'll answer your questions. So feel free to put some questions in the chat box there, so we can kind of help you guys out today.
No, perfect. Beat me to it there, Joe. And kind of last but not least, after listening to Joe working on all those great places, we go to Pat Massi, who's at a great place as well.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, Patrick Massi. Great to be here and listening to Joe and John. Completely different avenue that I took compared to them. And as Joe was saying, there's no right way, wrong way of getting into the business or being in the business. I have been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be at my current facility my entire career. I've been here at Griff Harris Golf Course since I was 5. Grew up right down the road in Glenville, about 3 miles down the road. Worked for Joe Felder, who recently retired. He was here for 32 years. Former Met PGA professional, former Met PGA head, president of the section. His awards go on and on. I'm sure everybody in here knows Joe Felder, and working for a guy like that comes with a lot of connections. Like I said, very, very fortunate to be at the place that I grew up with at. Wintertime, go down to Florida, and that was my chance to work at the private section, the private clubs. My first year was actually at PGA National Resort, 20 years old. Joe said, who got me the job at that time, working outside ops there, he goes, listen, if you can make it through a winter there, you're going to be able to make it in this business. I was getting there at 4:30 in the morning at 20, staging carts, 1,000 bags down that bag room for anyone that's worked there. 350 golf carts. I mean, it's a city underneath that clubhouse. So that was an eye-opening experience, and I loved it. I hated and I loved it at the same time, and it certainly helped me with the busy facility that I'm at now at a public golf course. Then there was also Mayaku Lakes. Worked for Kerry McGahee there. Completely different professional than Joe Felder. Kerry was, meticulous, was kind of always on you, wore the shirt and tie, the blazer on those special days. And I learned so much from that man there. Great guy. Probably did 6 winters there with a great spot. And then Joe Bostic at Turtle Creek last few years. Great spot as well. Worked with a lot of friends there. Wonderful golf course, and learned a lot from Joe there as when he was the head professional. But he also worked here for Joe Felder after his time at Rolling Hills. So I knew Joe Bostic very well and learned a lot from him. All different types of management, leadership styles. But growing up here, very, very special place to me. Like I said, I've been here since I was 5, hanging around the shop. My father worked here for the town of Greenwich for 40 years. Retired 3 years ago. Helped oversee, basically, he started from cutting greens to being the starter to being the assistant GM, and doing memberships and all that. So he was here 40 years. My grandparents worked for him. So it's like that kind of story. Joe Felder was like a father to me. I learned a lot from him. Learned a lot of what to do, and then, in my opinion, some things not to do, which is, you come into the job, and like myself, being here as an assistant for so long, you listen to the complaints, the concerns, the ideas from the people that have been here, and you listen to all those things of what people want, what they don't want, and it certainly helps coming into my position, kind of having a leg up, knowing what people are looking for, if I do get the job, what they'd like to see, the changes. I came from a guy who was here for 32 years and, did things his way, did things a little maybe outdated as I would always, kind of break his chops a little bit. And as John maybe as well, replacing a guy who was there for 37, John. So
Yeah, 37 years. Yeah.
37 years. So, it's a long time, and, implemented my own ideas and got the place a little bit closer to the 21st century, as I like to say here. Certainly different compared to those guys. And, my job is, it's different, but I love it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very fortunate. I don't feel like it's work when I come here, which I think is important. It's a great time. I'm happy to say though, I finished my first year. That was hell, to be honest. With a lot of ups and downs. If you don't believe in Murphy's Law is real. Things happen, and there's no training for it really. Like there's a little bit, but I didn't go the PGM route. I went the GPTP, I guess back in the day they called it, and I went that route. And it's different, but there's nothing like hands-on experience. Everything that went wrong, everything was thrown at me my first year, and year two's got to be easier. I sure as hell hope so. We can get into all those the headaches and the things like that, but I wouldn't have it any other way. This place is special to me. I'm not going to find anyone that cares more about it than I do, and I can't wait to make it and bring it to its potential. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully here for a long time, like Joe was here for 32. And the previous guy was here, Nick Roberto, for those that remember that name. He was here for 20 something years. So that's it's kind of what I'm going for. I'm going for the John Butkins style. If anyone knows John Butkins, JB, pretty much born and raised at this place. So I hope to be here for a long time.
Great. No, thanks so much, guys. Pretty cool to see a lot of different stories and see kind of where you are at today. Kind of the first question that we have kind of to start this presentation is really just the process of getting your head professional job is, I think the three of you have had definitely different searches and have gone through multiples of them. So I think it'd be really cool for the group to kind of hear what went into it, how many interviews, who ran it, how, and a lot of what I've learned is, a lot of behind the scenes work that people have to do in order to get these jobs, where it's not just, the applying and interviewing. There's a lot of other work or other jobs to do. So we'll start with Joe, kind of talk us through how the interview process at Bonnie Briar went.
Thanks, Dan. Before getting the job, I'd say there's a couple important things you need to do. Pretty self-explanatory, but in order for my resume to stand out to land me that interview, right, I worked at great clubs. The first thing that people look at on your resume are probably those logos that you put on there, just seeing what clubs you worked at, what kind of experience you have had in the past. So that's something that I made sure that I did, working at Round Hill, working at Sunningdale, working at Tamarack and Old Palm, something that I made sure of. Also working for 3 national award-winning golf professionals, Michael Breed, who was the 2012 National Golf Teacher of the Year, Tom Henderson, 2015 Golf Professional of the Year. Actually, Michael was the 2012 Teacher of the Year. And then Jim McLean, who everybody knows, not sure what year he won, but I know he won the Teacher of the Year, National Teacher of the Year award at some point. So before you even jump into the interview process, make sure you get your resume to stand out and work for pros that can later turn into mentors. But just to kind of walk you through the process of how the interview process went at Bonnie Briar, it was led by the PGA of America. So it was led by Jonathan Gold. He was in charge of kind of narrowing down the applicants. And the first step was a Spark interview. For those of you that are unfamiliar or haven't experienced a Spark interview in the past, I recommend definitely learning about these because they can be a little bit intimidating. The way a Spark interview works is it's usually the first step for all the interviews. It's all on video. You know, you don't meet with anybody. The board will, or the selection committee will prepare maybe 5 questions or so. And it's just like what we're doing today, right? You get on your iPad, you get on your computer, and a question pops up. And the way it worked for me was it gave me unlimited time to think about the question. Usually the first question is just tell me about yourself. So you should know how to answer that question by now. But it gives you unlimited time to think about it, for me at least. And then you get 2 attempts where you press the record button and you answer the question. And if you're happy with the first attempt, you could submit it. If you're unhappy with it or you want to redo it, you could delete that one and go for your second attempt. But the second attempt, that's it. That's your final one. And you repeat that process for another 4 questions. So there's 5 questions in total. A friend of mine who was applying for a job in the New Jersey section, he told me that the Spark interview he participated in, they gave you the question and they gave you no time to think about it. So you just need to be, you just need to show your personality. You need to, make sure you're prepared for those interviews. They're all basic questions, nothing too crazy. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your strengths and your weaknesses. Very kind of basic questions that you kind of should be prepared for and know the answers to. But like I mentioned, if you don't know, if you're not unfamiliar with Spark interviews, I do some research and make sure you're ready when you're applying for that first head pro job. After the Spark interview, the selection committee and Jonathan Gold narrowed it down to, I'm not sure the amount of people that they narrowed it down to, but they made a cut after the Spark interviews. And then they brought people in to interview in person, which was just basically, it was basically like a board meeting. There was maybe 7 members there. Jonathan Gold sat in the meeting as well. And I was there for, might have been an hour and a half or 2 hours. And each member from the selection committee just asked some questions. Similar to the Spark interview, nothing crazy. All kind of, you can kind of tell from the job description what kind of questions they're going to ask. Usually the first 3 to 5 bullet points, right, are weaknesses at the club. Like going into the interview, I knew that the caddy operation was a weakness at the club just because they eliminated it from COVID. So I made sure to talk about and be prepared to talk about how I rebuilt the caddy program. I knew that they wanted to build a golf performance center, or at least develop a plan to build one. So I made sure that I was ready to kind of answer some questions for that. But that was the second round, just kind of sitting at that board meeting and just meeting all the individuals. And then felt like that went pretty well. Was lucky enough to make it to the final interview. This was a little bit more in depth. We started out by playing 9 holes. There was either 7 or 8 members on the selection committee. So I played 5 holes with the men, and then the last 4 holes with the women. And it's really important when you're out there playing golf with the members, or the members on the selection committee. Yes, your golf game needs to be good, right? You don't need to go out there and shoot 32. Make some pars, throw in a birdie or 2. But it's more important to be social, right? As you're walking down the first hole, make sure you're having a conversation with that member. Make sure you're giving them a little simple tip, maybe a chipping tip or a grip tip. You're not going to change their swing out there, right? We're not gonna, give them a tip that's going to ruin their day. But just socialize, make sure you're giving them simple tips out there. One tip that I found, that I really liked, I was at a wedding like a week before at Echo Lake. A friend of mine was getting married, and the director of golf from Echo Lake was there. And I told him about the interview I had coming up, and he said, make sure they see you picking up trash, right? And it's something that I normally do, but I found that a great point. That if they see you picking up trash out there and throwing it out, right, it really shows that you care and that you want to take care of the course. So I found that really helpful. And I made sure that they saw me picking up trash there. Another thing that I find important, not only during the interview process, but when you're playing golf with your members. I'm big on playing golf with different members, not playing with the same people all the time. Like when I played with the women, I played from the women's tees. It's not about, playing from your tees, unless they're adamant they want to see you play the tips and they want to see you bomb some drives. It's more about being social out there, hanging out with them on the tee box, right? watching them swing to give them a little tip. So I played the last 4 holes from the women's tees, and I made the course a little bit easier, I gotta say. But after we played 9 holes, we went straight to the lesson tee. We went to the range. I did a little group clinic. That was something that was really easy to me. With my teaching background, I felt really comfortable. So, going into that, not something that I really needed to prepare for. It was just something, as an assistant, I taught a lot. I did a lot of clinics. So it was something that was just kind of like second nature to me there. One thing I did forget, I use my iPad for every lesson, and I actually forgot my iPad. And not that it's a huge deal, but I like to have my iPad just to kind of show the video. I've got one of these big iPads, and I like to show the members their swings. So just make sure you're prepared. It's kind of funny. I ended up getting the job, but that was something that made me just a little nervous, instantly that I forgot that. And not that it was a big deal, but just wanted to kind of share that kind of funny story there. And then the last part of this interview was just the final presentation. This is something that, like I mentioned before, working for all these great pros, all these mentors, like Chris Muldoon was instrumental for me. He really helped me kind of develop a plan going into this final presentation. He literally sent me his PowerPoint presentation that he had for the Tuxedo Club. And I just took a lot of notes from that and kind of took ideas from that, numerous phone calls on, how to answer these questions, how to present. So Chris was really helpful. Had to give him a shout out in this presentation, like I told him I would. So thank you, Chris, for everything you did for me. But I had a presentation, I had a TV set up. I went through maybe like 8 or 10 slides, just kind of hit on the caddy program, the teaching building, what brands I would bring into the golf shop. Something funny, like after golf, I took a shower and I changed into my suit and tie in the locker room. And I'm looking around in the locker room and I see like all these old shoes, like Adidas, FootJoy, which are great shoes, but like no G4s, no Jordans in there. And it's just funny. I knew that when I was going to present that I was going to bring G4 shoes in the golf shop, that they would think that was awesome. So, to get back to the final presentation, it was just, I presented, my slides, I handed out some booklets, and then they each asked about one question each. And, it was kind of funny. I could kind of tell from the vibe, the questions that they were asking, that I was probably going to be, at least a top 2 or top 3 candidate for the job. You can kind of get the vibe in the room, right? If it's going well or if it's not, and just felt like it was going really well. But that's kind of how the process went. So just wanted to share the details of that and hope that helps you guys as you're going into your first or maybe second or third head pro interview.
Great. No, that's perfect. It's very in-depth, and that was perfect and great to hear about Muldoon. I worked for Muldoon, as you know, Joe, and he's been unbelievable in my career. But he's helped me out a ton. I think when I was an intern, he rewrote my entire resume for me, and it was really good to have. Let's hear from Pat Massi. I know Pat has had a different one, being in the public sector. So it was really interesting to hear about his kind of story.
Yeah, again, mine completely different. I had to submit something I've never heard of before this whole process. It wasn't just your resume and cover letter and a portfolio. I had to bid on the job. I had to the town puts out an RFP, a request for proposal for the job. And I'm looking at Joe, and I when he was here, I was looking at Joe. I'm like, what the hell is this? Looking at this, and he pulled up on the town website, and it's like 70 pages of just hieroglyphics to me. I'm like, what is this? And fortunate enough over the years, ton of connections here. I talked to a gentleman who dealt with RFP contracts, and he was explaining it to me. So what it really was about to apply for the job is, again, bidding on the job. I had to, looking at it right now, this is it here in front of me, something like this. And it states, how much, they charge you for rent. I have to pay rent. Everything's town property here. So I've got to pay rent on the building. Nice building that was finally redone 2010, I want to say. Went from a garage to what feels like Taj Mahal to me over here. again, bidding on it. So how much I was willing to pay, what they expect in rent, and then what I was willing to pay. Cart rentals here. I am in charge of, I get a piece of the carts and a piece of the driving range, what I was willing to, my percentage. Being an outsider to this place, you'd have no idea what to bid and what it's worth and the numbers. Like, you just don't know. So I had, thankfully, Joe, who went through multiple contracts here. I don't know, 6 or 7 of them. And I inherited his last one. So he walked me through the step-by-step process. He told me what to write down, what not to write, and he goes, if they expect this or they want this from you, don't take it. It's not worth it. So my deal is completely different. Basically, you need to know, I needed to know all the expenses on, which I have all the expense here. I have the expense on the carts. I have the lease on the carts, the insurance on the driving range, the insurance on my side of the building, the driving range mats. Anyone who has to pay for that stuff. I just got an invoice the other day for 3 mats and 6 hitting stuff. I mean, it was like $5, $6, almost $6,000 that I'm paying for. Driving range balls. I had all Joe's prices for the bills for Wi-Fi, everything you can think of. Pretty much, I am paying for here. Hopefully, how to get the job first before I had any exceptions. When you write it out, you look at the RFP and they one of the section is any exceptions or anything you want to change. Well, you got to get the job first. And I felt I had to get the job first and earn my stripes and convince the town, like, hey, they made the right decision. But I would like to change some of these things in here to make the job obviously a little bit better. But I don't have a salary. I knew that going in. I don't have any town benefits. I'm not a town employee. So I knew all these things going in. I bet on myself, all the chips on the table. If we're closed, I don't make any money. Obviously, we're open. And then, last year never rained. So could be a little scary that my first year was maybe my best year of my career. It never rained. So when carts are going out and driving range balls are being sold, I'm making money. We're closed for, a week. I'm not making any of that money back. So I knew what I was getting into. I knew it was tough. I knew it was an old contract that hopefully is going to be changed. But after that, once they accept your proposal, I've never been on a formal interview for any job in my life. It was always, oh, you work for Joe, or, oh, this guy, or, oh, your father worked. Oh, it kind of that type of, it was a handshake. It was nothing formal ever really for me. So this whole process was new. It was scary in a way. But what actually was funny about it is once I submitted it and I went down, I had to go to town hall and you meet with the mayor, the director of Parks and Rec for Greenwich, the former GM that was here, who I knew very well, which was a surprise to me, sitting at the other end of the table, and then 2 people that I was able to select to be on the committee. And I took my lady president and my men's president. And so it was very comfortable in the room. But what was very strange about it, it was during, 2021, so in August, and they still had COVID restrictions and everybody had to wear a mask. So it's kind of it was a little weird, but also, made me a little bit more comfortable. Everybody in the room had a mask, so it almost felt like, I don't know, like protected in a way, not, like, I don't know. It was just a different kind of feel, but I felt very comfortable being at the table. And, what I had to be careful with was what people said, some advice was, the town doesn't really like change. They're kind of set in their ways a little bit, don't like to see change. So when this change was coming, I did not want to hit them with all my ideas right away. I hit them with a few things, certain things that I felt needed to be addressed. You'll laugh, but like I mentioned how, again, all on my expense. I mentioned to the town that, I wanted to put a POS system in on my side of the building. I was coming from a guy who had a cash register, and I was clowning around with him. You felt like you were at a gas station, like something like that. And they were like, "Whoa, well, tell us more about this POS system." I'm like, "Well, it's kind of what you use every day when you go to a business these days." Um, I mentioned launch monitor. I bought a launch monitor. They had no idea what that was because technology is not that wasn't a thing here. And I explained, I invested in myself, bought a flight scope. They're explaining that and how I want to get into simulate in the wintertime, do some teaching in the winter and explaining those types of changes. And they were really on board with it. They liked it because they knew they needed a change. But they were happy about that. So you just had to be careful. There's so many other things I want to change here, but you hit people with change right away. They get a little nervous and they, kind of push back a little bit. So that was interesting. But it was nothing like Joe was saying, multiple rounds. It was basically that one round. I knew, a few weeks after, but it was a very stressful time, just in the sense of also planning a wedding. So getting married, shortly after I had to submit this, which is like 70 pages of information, and then trying to get married as well, and then having this on the back burner. And it was just a lot last year. But my process completely different. It definitely helped being here. Like I said, they don't like change. So being a local, and spending my whole life and having my father and grandparents work, I mean, it all certainly helped. But also having my own ideas, I was afraid that also, well, maybe it is time for a change. And, he worked for Joe his entire career, and maybe it's something we want that's different up there. Maybe we don't want this. So that was also in the back of my mind. So, but I had a lot of support. Hundreds of letters, I'm not even kidding, were written and sent down to town hall on my behalf. I've got 1,500 members here. Now, you don't see everybody, but at this club, you've got about 1,500 members. You do about 45,000 rounds in about 9 months. Place is a factory. It's the only public course in town. You've got 8 other clubs that are all private. And so you build a ton of relationships. A lot of your local guys here, and then there's people that move here that are here because there's a wait list to get into the clubs in town. Like, they've got to wait a couple of years. And so they're here. And but using them for those letters, you get a lot of big names in town that are here and also at other clubs. So the networking was great, the contacts, but again, having that leg up on the competition certainly helped. Getting jobs are hard. These jobs, as we were following a guy that was here for 32 years, and John, 37. I mean, the jobs don't open that often, and it's kind of scary getting in the golf business. It's a potential that you might not get one, and sometimes the assistant job is better. And I was laughing like, man, I wish go back to the assistant days, because everything falls on your plate and you got to be ready for that, all the complaints. But it's fun. It was certainly an eye-opening experience for me, a different experience than everyone else up here is talking about. Completely different, just having to bid on your job. But thankfully I got it. And like I said, hopefully, we get some change, and I could be here, for as long as they let me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pat. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to have just such a different process as a lot of people do. And I think it's really beneficial to hear about. So we'll go to John now with his kind of process at Connecticut Golf Club. I know him and I talked a lot about this and the importance of kind of having people back you. So we'll go to John.
Yeah. So long story short, job was posted on the job board immediately before applying for the job. I think it's very important to do some research on the job you're going for. There are some people that believe that you should just make a resume and throw it into every job that opens up. I'm kind of one of those guys that over the last handful of years that have been looking at jobs. I think it's important, number one, to really, you got to be behind the job that you're going for. Getting the title of head pro director of golf is great, but I think it's important. You got to be passionate. And you got to be all in on the job you're going for. So I did a lot of research on the back end about Connecticut Golf Club, the health of the club, what's going on right now. Rod Loesch was there for 37 years. It's a great sign. I literally took a drive up to where Connecticut Golf Club was. Do I want to work over here? Do I want to be in this environment? Do I want to live in this area? So after I decided I was going to go for the job, I put the resume in, and I'm going to, again, I'll keep it brief for the process and kind of give you some things of what I learned and important tips that I got along the way. So I applied for the job. It started off as a quick phone call with the president and one other search committee guy. Maybe he was on the phone for 30 minutes, literally a phone call, not even Zoom. After that, we scheduled the Zoom call pretty quick. It was maybe a handful of guys, including the president. Went through that round. In the meantime, I'm talking with Jeff Voorhees and Jonathan Gold, because the Met PGA was heavily involved in this search. So after the Zoom call was there, they said they would let us know about the next round. And one thing I also learned is when they're in constant communication with you, that's a good sign. If it goes a little silent for a while, sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking. So I was hearing back from them pretty often. We then scheduled a full day at the club. So I got there at 8 a.m. and I did not leave there till 7 p.m. We did everything from playing golf, having lunch, teaching, talking, open discussion. I mean, there had to have been 15 to 25 people that floated in and out of the clubhouse throughout the day. It was really testing me as a golf pro all around, from a playing standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, from a business standpoint. After that day concluded, I was called back for another day being with another completely different set of members. So that's a phone call, a Zoom call, 2 full days at the club. After that, I actually went to Florida because I had to be down here for work. And I ended up playing with members from Connecticut Golf Club down in Florida. And again, during this whole process, no different than you guys are as assistants. Whenever you're playing in a pro-am, if you get paired up with random members, you just don't know who you're playing with. So you should always take all of those opportunities as an interview. So I ended up playing with 3 or 4 Connecticut Golf Club members down in Florida. What they framed it as a casual round of golf to get to meet me, and I took it as another interview. And long and behold, it was 2 past presidents. One guy was on the search committee, and the other one was really close with the current president. If I showed up with a backwards hat and acted like an idiot that day, probably wouldn't have got any interest in the job. But I treated it as an interview, and the feedback was great, and went back up the chain. And the long and short of it is, a couple of weeks went by. I was doing some research, on what's going on. You start to hear, and the realistic truth behind all of these processes is when you get down to the finals, and there's a handful of guys left, you all know who's in the finals. It's impossible to keep it secret. So I knew who was in the running, friends of mine. So I was just like, okay, well, it's a jump ball. We'll see what happens. The funny thing I'll never forget it. The funny thing about me getting the job, I was down here in Florida. And I was out to dinner with a friend for a party, and I was about 7 old fashions in, and I get a phone call from Connecticut, and I'm like, oh God. And it said, the iPhone said, maybe Dave Groner, who's the president. And, I didn't really want to answer it at that point in time at 9:30 on a Thursday, but I took the phone call, and he offered me the job, and it was amazing. And he literally forwarded me the contract that night, which we're going to talk about the contract later. And I accepted the job. That's the gist of the process. It was very intense. Took me off guard. I didn't make any presentations. A couple other head pro interviews I was in, they never asked for a presentation. I barely brought my resume there. It was just completely off the cuff. I think we're all unique in our situations, but every job committee runs it differently. Mine was pretty intense. There was a lot of people shaking a lot of hands, a lot of feedback. But you just be prepared as much as you can. And, use your contacts and fellow pros to the best of your ability on advice. But going through that entire process is, I would tell you that my advice to you during that process is preparation is everything. Knowing everything about the club. If you have mutual members at other facilities, ask them questions about it. Anything you can dig up of the club, you should. It's an important thing. Back to Joe was saying with the resume and cover letter. Anyone could put a cover letter and resume together. It's not that hard. You can call one of your smart friends that speak English really well, get a cover letter and make you sound really smart. You can put logos, you can put all kinds of stuff on your resume. But at the end of the day, when you get in the room, all of that, if you are not prepared and you are not someone who has the experience, you're going to get exploited in those interview processes. It's just the truth. You know, the resume and cover letter obviously get you the phone call, but it's important to have details and the meat and potatoes behind that resume. The other thing that I will tell you is it's really good to be confident in the interview room, not arrogant. You don't want to go into these interviews and pretend you're going to change the world or change the club. And, you know, again, someone like myself, I'm backing Rod Loesch, who is a super well-respected professional in the Met section and even in the national. He was running for national offices. He's a guy who's in that generation of not really sure how to use an iPad. So it's just different. So I knew that. So I didn't want to come into Connecticut saying, oh, well, I'm just going to change this place, because come to find out, Connecticut, as much as they want change, they are the culture at the club is very important. So when you're in these interview rounds, don't act like you know everything. Don't try to change the world. Stay confident. Let them ask you the questions, give them responses, and give them. I gave a lot of very generic answers. Didn't promise anything. I just kind of said, you know, and if I didn't know the answer, I would say, well, listen, I'm all for it. We can look into it, and it's your club. I kept throwing back that it's your club. You know, whatever you want to do, you know, I'm your guy. We'll figure it out. And so, like, I left it that way, and I think that was a very easy way of kind of letting them know that I'm a new generational pro. I'm a young guy. I'm in tune with all the new stuff, but I'm also not looking to traumatize the membership. You know, and I just think the context, you know, the cliche of, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's true. It's true in every facet of life, and in our business, it's a small niche business. You know, being an assistant pro, I was on the board, very involved, playing in all the tournaments, shaking hands with a lot of head pros in the section, and very involved with the Met PGA section, and that's all important. You have to be known. When I was in the interview process, they all saw, you know, awards I've gotten or tournaments I've played in, and, you know, what member from Old Oaks knows a friend at Connecticut who sent an email to the president. You need to send everything to the club to support you as a person. It does not hurt. So it's a really cool process. That Connecticut Golf Club was my 4th head pro interview process I went through. The first one, I barely got through the first phone call. I didn't quit the business. It's the realistic side of things. You know, the all of us on the chat, including Dan is moderating this, but Dan's going into year 1 in his art. We're all young, you know, and, you know, when I was going through the processes, I did hear from people like, well, I don't know, you know, you're 32 years old, like, you know, you're a little young, you know, who knows? And there's a lot more younger guys getting jobs now. But don't let age mean anything, you know, as far as, you know, if you know your stuff, it doesn't matter how old you are. Dan knows as well as anyone. He had a pretty intense interview process as well. Him and I talk a lot. And again, the long and short of it is, I think it's really important to always look on the job board. My word of advice as well, and again, this is just speaking frank, if you're just looking for the title, make sure you understand what the title represents, because I know I've always wanted to be a head pro. I want to be in charge of all facets of the operation. I'm not looking to just stand on the tee teaching. make sure you're ready for that. Don't go just for the head pro title, because there is a very large difference between an assistant professional and a head pro director of golf. There's a lot of really positive things, I would say, and these guys on the phone call would probably agree. The quality of life is actually a lot better than you think. We have a lot of work to do. I mean, my head was spinning year one, no different than Pat was, and Joe, it's still spinning. I'm nonstop doing stuff for work throughout the winter, even if I'm not on property. But you have to make sure that you are prepared for all the tasks at hand. It's really, really, really important. It's definitely a large responsibility, and we're it's very competitive out there. And if you can get the job, take it for what it's worth and work hard and do what you need to do, and always lean on your fellow golf professionals.
No, I couldn't agree more. The whole process of reaching out and asking for help is a huge part of it. And that was something that I never would do, is ask for help. And that's something I would say the last 2 years applying for jobs I've done. So it's really important to kind of keep asking for help, and, not to give up if it doesn't work out. But kind of transitioning, actually, John kind of led us perfectly into that. Going from that assistance role to that head professional role, your obviously time is going to be shrunk, especially in year one, where you're thinking about a lot of things and trying to implement some changes. And we'll start with John again. He kind of talked a little bit about it, where talk difference between assistants and head pros, and what did you do about kind of managing your time a lot better? You're still on mute, John.
Sorry, I was handling the dog barking. I just threw him outside. So, coming from Old Oaks, where I was teaching over 7, 8, 900,000 hours of teaching, right? I was a main teaching pro, along with 4 others, running a lot of the events with the head professional. One thing I learned, so Nick Maselli being my head pro, who's literally been my big brother throughout all the processes. One thing I learned from him was, he was at Old Oaks as an assistant for 17, 18, 19 years. So when he got the job at Old Oaks, he already had a lot of clients and lessons. So when he transitioned over, it was hard for him to quote unquote tell someone, hey, now I'm head pro, I'm not giving you lessons anymore, go to someone else. So he probably teaches too much as a head pro. So he told me, when the day comes and I get a job, just make sure that you are available to do a lot of other things, and don't just be that teaching pro on the tee for 9 hours. And, it's a little bit of an old school way of thinking, teaching, playing all day. But in 2023, I think a lot of the clubs are looking for a 5-tool athlete. They're looking for someone who can play, who can teach, run a business, manage people, solve problems. So when I got the job, we started an online teaching schedule. I made it very clear right off the bat that I made my windows of teaching small. I gave them little windows every day, say 4 or 5 hours a day. And I was pretty strict year one. If someone wanted a lesson, I would direct them towards an assistant. Obviously, if it was really slow and in the real world, if my president asked me for a lesson at 1 o'clock, I'm not going to tell him I'm not available. You figure that out as you go. But generally, I try to train the members right off of year one, what my schedule would be, where I'll be, how I'm going to operate my personal life and my job. So time management of when to check in the golf shop and make sure everything's going right, and talk with the cart kids and make sure the range is going well. Those are all things that you kind of learn as you go. But I think it's really important overall to set the precedent at your club, year one, of kind of what the day in the life of your head pro is going to be like. For the last 15, 20 years, they really never had anyone that played golf at Connecticut Golf Club. Rod Loesch was a really good player when he first got the job back in his day, but for the last 10 years, he really didn't pick up golf clubs. The assistants never really could play. So now that the assistants are encouraged to play by me, and they it's important to them to understand that I may be away in a pro-am. I might be competing in the New York State Open. I'm on the golf course with members playing golf. Previously, Rod would stand on the lesson tee for 9 straight hours, wave at everyone driving in, and that was, oh, well, there's our pro. And I'm different. I like to have my hands on everything. So, as an assistant, if you have a high responsibility job as an assistant, yeah, there's things you have to check in, but not really. It's on your head pro. When you are the guy, everything falls under your watch. So it's important to make sure you're not just being a one-dimensional, I teach all day head pro. So I definitely learned some things. So year 2, I'm going to maybe make a little adjustments here and there, but it's very important. Time management as a head pro is important. And even from a personal life standpoint, if you have a family and you have kids or wife, fiance, I mean, even if you're really, a single guy and you get a head pro job, I think it's also important to have them understand how important your personal life is too. I mean, I think we all can get a little caught up in how many hours we work throughout the season. And, if it's in the middle of June, listen, it is what it is. But I think it's important for them to understand that the balance of, your personal life and professional life, it can exist. It can coexist. It's not, you don't have to work 100 hours and sacrifice your family life, So the Connecticut has been a great welcoming to my family and everything. And, in my specific situation, I'm very close to the club. So, I'm able to, be close to home if needed. So time management is important. It's a big jump from assistant to head pro. Whoever's on this call, if they get a job in the next year or 2 years or 3 years, your head will be spinning, but you can always reach out to, myself or whoever, and, on ways to kind of curb the time management.
Awesome. No, thanks so much. Let's hear next from Joe.
Yeah, John made some great points there, right? These jobs are very different, right? You're gonna carry a lot of things over, right? As an assistant, I was similar to John, right? At Tamarack, I was teaching 8-9 hours a day, starting at 8 o'clock, leaving at 6. That's how you make your money, right? Your salaries are not great when you're an assistant. That's how you make your money. More importantly, that's how you build relationships, right? When you or sit behind the counter and that member buys a sleeve of golf balls with you, you have that 5-minute conversation. But when you spend an hour out in the lesson tee with that individual, that's what helps you get these head pro jobs, building those relationships. So, that's what you have to do as an assistant. But when you become a head pro, right, there's a lot more that's on your plate. Won't go in depth because John kind of covered it, right? But you got to block your book more. That's something that I did here. I would kind of look at the week. I would sit down at the beginning of the week and, see what tournaments are coming up, see if we got a busy day on Saturday, and just kind of adjust my book accordingly. So that when someone calls the golf shop and, they're, my staff members trying to book a lesson, oh, Joe's going to be ranger in the golf course from 12 to 3 on Saturday. It's a really busy day. Pace of play is probably going to be really slow. So Joe's going to be out there. You can't teach from 12 to 3, or, that's just a random example, but something that I think is really important is not only blocking your book, right, but being visible, right? Being out on the golf course, being out on the lesson tee if you're not giving a lesson, right? Just going to, chit chat with the guys, with your female members, with just being out there, helping them with anything that they need. I can't tell you, how many times, right, I booked a lesson for one of my assistants, right? Or I've signed someone up for a tournament, just running into somebody out in the golf course. So I think it's really important as a head pro to be visible, to have your hand on each part of the operation. You need to be available for that. You can't stand on that lesson tee for 9 hours. That's something that a previous pro did here before. And I can't tell you how many times I heard this year that, man, Joe, it's nice to see you out in the golf course. It's nice to see you playing with the members. The last pro sat on the lesson tee for 9 hours a day, and, we didn't really see him. So that's important. So make sure that you're out there, you're visible. Another thing, another big adjustment for me was owning a business. I own the golf shop. That, I kind of had very little experience operating an open to buy plan, right? Using QuickBooks, using the POS system. I had a little bit of experience with that, but all of these things, like now I have to know how to do this. I need to be able to teach somebody how to do these things, right? Simplify it. So, I've gotten really good over the past year at doing those things. I'm definitely no expert and I'm still learning as I go here, right? But the more that you can kind of understand how to use these things, right? And know what an open to buy plan is in detail, going into your job, right? The easier that transition is going to be for you. I'll never forget, it was like my first week on the job and I'm trying to get, I know what brands to bring in, right? G4, Grayson, Peter Millar, those are easy, right? Those are the brands that I wanted to bring in, but figuring out how much to buy, I had no clue. So Mario Guerra from Quaker Ridge texted me one day and he's like, yeah, what's your open to buy number? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, you got to call John Kennedy. So, what we talked about before, right? Asking for help. Like I called John Kennedy. He came here. He came to the shop. He brought a notepad. And we did the open to buy plan together. I mean, that was huge for me, right? I wouldn't have had as successful of a year merchandise wise and owning the business wise, right? If it wasn't for John. So thanks to John for everything that you did for me last year. So, but managing your time as a business owner, right? When I come into the shop every morning, sometimes there's 10 invoices that get emailed to me. You got to enter those into your QuickBook. You got to organize them. You got to put them away. You have to pay some bills, right? You have to do a little bit of that every day. And it's probably like 20 to 25% of your time is allocated to running the business here. So you just need to be prepared for that. Try and get as much of that stuff done earlier in the week. If you're a workaholic like myself, try and do it on a Monday if you can, maybe knock out an hour or two, right? When you get interrupted. I know that's not ideal, but I'm guilty of doing that. But yeah, try and get that stuff done early. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have the time. You can be outside. Those are your busiest days. You got to be playing golf. You got to be in front of the members. So those are just things to think about, small things to think about as you're transitioning from an assistant to head pro. Another little thing, right? Just our driving range. We have one of the best driving ranges in this area. It's a 270-yard range. We're renovating it next winter, so it's going to be a world-class facility. But Quaker Ridge and Wingfoot right down the street, right? Top 100 clubs, great golf courses, but they've got like 200-yard ranges, 180-yard ranges. Not that those courses need great ranges, but that really helps us kind of stand out here. And the club is busy, right? The range is an awesome space, right? So if I go up there on a Thursday afternoon, 6 o'clock after work, every stall is packed. There's like 20 to 25 people up there hitting balls, right? So if I was given a playing lesson out in the golf course, I wouldn't be able to walk up to the range just to kind of check that, hey, we're running low on golf balls. We got to send a guy out there. And yeah, my staff can help me out with that, right? But I like to be involved. I like to walk around the place and just make sure that the range is in good shape, right? Because I know it's going to be busy at 6. So just little things to think about, as you're making that transition.
That's great. No, a lot of good stuff. Pat, kind of go through what it looked like for you in that change from being more of that teacher to being the head pro and business owner.
Yeah, again, a little different. Again, as I was saying, kind of the whole Murphy's Law thing, anything that can go wrong will. And unfortunately, like for my situation, year one, it was tough because a lot of things fell apart right in the beginning of the season and mid-season. And everything here, the way it really works and the way it has been and what I inherited is it all falls on me. My door's always open. The shop's always open. The side of the building next door, I clown around and say it's like Fort Knox. You can't even get in to talk to like the management side really. So everything comes over to here. And that's what they're used to. They're used to Joe always being here. We're open 7 days a week, which, I took for granted that Monday off as an assistant. Joe would always do the outings. The outings aren't too big, but they're big. Especially now being in this seat, I look forward to those Mondays. Because it helps you move some inventory, but we're 7 days a week. And again, the whole time management for me, is a little different because I had to wear that hat as the assistant's hat and the head pro hat at a very busy place. You know, things happened towards the beginning of my season last year where I lost my first assistant a few days before we're opening. So that just fell on me. So, and it's like getting back to you're not trained for that. Like, you just have to figure it out and you have to do it. So thankfully I have another guy, my other teaching assistant, Walter, who worked for Joe for 3 years before myself. He got thrown a lot more, and then I taught a lot more than any head pro should ever teach in their first year. You know, especially hearing that when you play, I played in the head pro championship this year, and they're asking, you know, with a couple guys have been head pros for years, and they're like, how's it going, this and that, and not even thinking about it, one of them said to me, you know, you need to control your book, and that needs to be on your desk. It needs to be in your office. And it was always accustomed to being out at the counter where it was readily available. But again, also, I'm at a very busy place where we can have myself and 3 full-time teachers. That's that busy. Again, we're the only public golf course in town. So when that happened, you know, you're not trained to lose that huge part of your operation. You just have to do it. Like PGA Junior League, it was something I did not want to be involved in at least the first year, and my assistants do it because you have so many other tasks. I have the employees. I've got 12 to 13 employees that work for me, and I had to figure out payroll. The club doesn't pay them. No, they have no hand in that. I had to figure that out. Opening up an LLC, no clue how to do that. I had to get a lawyer. You know, things that you don't, that take up time. Learning the POS system. Again, we didn't have that. So getting that in and needing to know how to put in inventory and how to price things and how to get the right printer to print out your ticket, you know, your barcodes for your SKUs, all that you're learning while teaching. I did 45,000 in teaching my first year. I mean, any head pro does 45,000 their first year. I'd love to know. And what you thought. Like, talking to my friends, they're like, geez, it just did 20, did 12, did 15. But I had to take on that that responsibility. You know, it's hard to say no. It's one of my I can't say no. I always try and please everybody. I go around saying that, you know, it's their golf course, as John was saying, it's their golf course. I work for them. I don't look at it as, you know, my place. And, you know, I say yes a lot. I try because it's their club. They come here on their day off. They're spending money. They don't have to, you know, so I try to say yes, and it's something I need to work on, but hopefully this year 2, time management, I'll get a little better with. But, you know, I was thrown, you know, that curveball and had to hit it. And, you know, people understood, again, knowing these people forever, they understood the position I was kind of forced into, and they supported me through it. It was a lot. It's thankfully a supportive wife. You know, like I said, we got married in 21 of August and went on a honeymoon. And then once the season started, I did not really see her much my first year. I was here 7 days a week, 6 o'clock to, you know, 8 o'clock, because I had to learn the system. You know, but it's the job I wanted. It's everything I want. I still want it. You know, it was a lot to go up against, and, you know, things you're just not taught, or your life experiences. Your ball machine breaks, I'm in charge of that. Town wants to get paid, so I'm responsible for the ball machine, the washer, the range picker, all that. Those are all my expenses. That went down on a holiday weekend. My maintenance crew is a little different than most. They're gone at 11 o'clock on a weekend. Where does that happen? The mechanic gone. Well, all of a sudden I had to learn how to be an electrician. The wheel breaks on my roller. And the kids are like, Pat, they send me a photo. The thing's collapsed. Busy range, a lot of ranges. Doral down the street closed a couple years back. The one over there in Elmsford, that double decker that's now FedEx. I think still FedEx. That was a busy range. So we are a very busy place. The front end wheel broke again. Who's that falling? Me. Well, okay. Well, now I'm a mechanic. Thankfully, those connections that I want to have in town, but also friends. I got fortunate. I was fortunate that he has 2 rollers at his driving range, and one of them wasn't being used. So ran over there, took off the front wheel, put it back on this one, and the kids were able to pick the balls. But you're not, and if those responsibility are yours, I've got a lot of experience in that. So if anyone needs help in that, I've got those. But maybe the club deals with that, or you've got someone that can handle that for you. But it all fell on me. Year 1 was brutal. I'm hoping year 2 is going to be better. But as John was saying, you've got to find that balance, even through all that, trying to find balance between, life at the club and life outside the club. Again, I'm coming from a guy who was here 7 days a week, March 15th to December 15th. He was here every day, and people weren't used to coming in the golf shop and not seeing me here in the office. And because I was out in the driving range, or I was out on the golf course, or fixing things and coming in with grease on me. They're like, what the hell's going on? So it was a little different, but they saw it, and it's just training. It's just training them to understand that it's different. It's a different culture. I want to be out playing again. I want to be out on the golf course playing with my men's groups, my ladies groups. Playing wasn't a thing the last bunch of years here, with the former staff that was here. It just wasn't. And I don't want that. I want to be outside where I love teaching and love playing, but mixing it up with different groups, I think is very important. So definitely lean on these guys and my friends, in the business as well, is how to get better with the time management. And, it was a lot, but it comes with the business, and the business is changing. I'm looking for one more a teacher here. I need one more teacher. Once that's said and done, I feel like I'll be able to breathe more. I found a shop manager, which we never really had. That's going to be huge, because again, it's my business. It's my shop. I own it. So I definitely, year 1 was great because I had to learn the POS. I had to learn inventory control and all those things that I really wasn't taught. And shame on me for not asking more questions. I think that's important. I didn't really care at the time when I was a little younger to know what paying invoices were all about, what it took, and what the net terms were, and what your discounts were. If you did this, you put in a certain amount, you get that. Dealing with, which we'll get into with sales reps and those relationships. So that kind of hurt me, not asking enough questions or watching my former boss do what he did, but also at the same time. And I've got a great relationship with him. I also don't want to do what he did. He did very old school. So I did things a lot different, and we still talk about it, and it was funny having him here to teach, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, because again, he was here for a long time, and we worked out a deal, and I leaned on him a lot, but he just couldn't believe the changes, and like almost made him nervous with some of the changes I made. But it's that old school versus the new school, and it's definitely different. But again, like I said, I'm hoping for year 2 this season. I know a lot more. I have newer equipment now. Thankfully, I made some money, so I can buy new things that won't break down, hopefully, that I inherited. But it was definitely tough. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm hoping this year is going to be better, because I'm hoping to cut that teaching in half. It's still a lot, but it's a very busy place, and you try to make everybody happy, and you can't, and you need to learn that and accept that. And I'm trying to as best I can, because again, it's their place, it's not my place, and I'm just trying to get it to where I see the potential for it to be, and make everybody want to be here and have a great experience. So 2023, I'm hoping for a better understanding of time management.
Awesome.
You see that question, Pat?
Is Jeff Voorhees wants to know if that's a new logo on your sleeve?
Oh, you didn't even know you could see that. Yes. So again, as John said, doing the research on your facility, I got the job. I went to Greenwich Library to go to the archives and the historical section, and everybody I know started laughing at me. They're like, "You know where the library is?" Like, my family. I went there. I spent hours there. I got in touch with this guy who's a historian, and we pulled up old information on the golf course. If anyone knows the place, Steve Elias, maybe. It used to be called Bruce Memorial back in the day. They changed the name to Griffith E. Harris Golf Course after the first selectman at the time who got the land approved by making a deal with the town and having 95 come through an overpass through Greenwich. So there were a lot of moving parts to make this happen. It was something that was they talked about in the 20s and 30s, and the wars stopped all that, which I found very interesting and nobody knew about. But yeah, Jeff, to get to your question, it is there was nothing historic here at the Griff. It's a guy's name that they named it after, and so there's no tree out there. We had a tree, but everybody's got a tree. It's like, all right, how basic is that? But there's no significance to anything out on the golf course. There's no creek, there's no rock, there's nothing. So I got the job, and this guy reached out on Instagram and heard I got the job and does alternate logos. And Ryan Gable, who does alternate golf logos, reached out to me, and he's done some clubs for some other people and is getting bigger and bigger, and knows the business, knows the section, knows the area. Very, very knowledgeable guy. And he reached out and we kicked around some ideas. And then one day he comes to me and says, Pat, we know there's nothing there. What about, doing a chess piece, which that is, with a golf club through it and the year on it. And he goes, how about the chess piece? And the busy street that runs through town here is King Street. Other side of the street's New York. So we've got a very busy road here that leads to a ton of different clubs. And that piece is the King piece for King Street, a little play on, a little alternate logo. But, I wasn't fortunate enough to inherit a nice historic old logo. And it's a logo that I'm happy with, and we never had anything. And I think it's important, to have some kind of touch up or a logo if you're lucky enough to have one at your club that you get, because that helps sell merchandise. And being here my whole life, I saw what my former boss would put in here, and it was the lower end stuff. It was the the smaller names, so I brought in all higher end things and brands, and again made him nervous. And but I like to roll the dice. I go for the the heroic shot, and they loved it. They loved the logo. I didn't put a lot in because I wasn't sure how it was going to be received, and I blew it out of the water. So a lot more of my merchandise is going to have it. I think it's very important to do your research on your facility to find something. And thankfully, I didn't really have any red tape to deal with, with a committee or memberships or anything like that. I can kind of do my own thing when it comes to that. And they loved it. It helped move products. So a lot more of it will be on this year. And thanks to Ryan Gable, and very creative. And it helped. It certainly helped. But, doing your research, I think, is very important, the long end of it. And
Hey,
they
Very
were-
cool.
Just to
Yeah,
piggyback off of what Pat is talking about with this alternate logo, our main logo is a shield, pretty traditional. Something I discovered when I first got here is they brought back a mascot logo. No one really knows the name of him. We called him Mr. Bonnie Breyer. It's kind of like an old Scottish gentleman. They found it on an old scorecard from like the 40s and the 50s. And then my board was going through the process this year of renovating the shield logo and doing some other logos that we haven't put into use. But part of that part of that was they allowed me to redo the Mr. Bonnie Briarman logo. And I thought it came out pretty cool. You know, something small here, but I found it really fun, you know, because you help design this logo, you put it on merchandise, right? I own the business, so it helps you sell more merchandise. It's something cool and new. I have it. Oh man, I got the thing blurred out here. Let me take that off for 1 second.
Yeah, I saw yours, Joe, earlier in the season before we started, and I thought that was as an alternate, like, or whether it is or not, is a really cool, different, cool logo. If you can end up not having that blurred, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can't really show it to you, unfortunately. I can't figure out how to turn off the blur, but something that was kind of cool, Mr. Bonnie Briarman there, you can kind of see it, and something that was neat and fun, something that me and Pat kind of had similar experiences there, so thought that was cool to share.
On that note too, just to generalize it, you know, it's the trend would be to, you know, it doesn't even need to be a head pro. If you're an assistant right now, take on a task that maybe your head pro doesn't ask of you, or the club doesn't even know they need. So like at Connecticut, I got the job and I thought the website was terrible. So I told them, if you trust me, I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to rebuild the entire website. So this whole winter, I've been rebuilding the website with Club Essentials, and almost going to be done in the next 3 weeks. No one asked that of me. They trusted me. I got the finances all squared away, and I'm doing it. So it's definitely, even as an assistant, do something without being asked, or that you feel you could bring to the table. You know, if it costs a little money, get approvals, but show initiative and do something that maybe can affect the club in a really positive way. And you'll be amazed on, I mean, I've sent the website out already and they think it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. So it's important to just take an initiative and do something like that, especially when you're a head pro, but definitely even as an assistant.
Right. And to piggyback on that, I think it's very, important for kind of people to know, like, going into this first year for you guys, and maybe this is a selfish question on me, obviously you have all your ideas, you want to change a lot. But how did you approach it? Were you changing a lot? Were you changing one or two things? I think it'd be beneficial for everyone to kind of hear about that as their transition, or as people transition into this role. So kind of start with you, Joe.
Great question, Dan. I think when you come into the job, you probably have too much on your to-do list to change. You don't have to change everything. I can't tell you how many times, like, I just did a normal thing, right? Whether it's how I handled the tournament starting on the first tee, or how I handled our presentation with the big scoreboards on the 18th green, right? Or how we ran a stag night for the member guests. That's never been done before, but it's something that I've always done that, like, blew my members away. Something that I've always done at the, great clubs that I've worked at before, that I've learned under, mentors of mine. Basic things, right? The members, like, really appreciated. I had one guy came into me. I'll always remember this conversation. My assistant Barbara was talking to him, and he goes, Barbara, like, we didn't even, like, realize the potential, like what we had before. Like, we just thought, like, this is the way it was. And then you guys came in here and just ran the operation, and it's like night and day. So like I said before, you're going to want to change a lot. That's just in your DNA, that's in your nature. But I would say pick the most important things to change. Like, something simple for us was we had strip slider scoreboards. I don't even know if half the people in this, like, Zoom call know what a strip slider scoreboard is, but, like, I didn't even know how to work it, to be honest with you. It's like you literally take, like, you have to print out these little, like, 2 by, like, 20 strip kind of piece of paper and slide them in. I didn't even want to learn how to use them. So I got 2 big green scoreboards. I forget the brand I used, right? And they thought that was awesome. Another thing that's, like, simple, ranger in the golf course, right? Like I mentioned before, I know that's not a big thing that I changed, but just being out on the golf course, making a presence. Like, the first couple times I did that, like, I had members saying, thanks for being out here. Like, I'm like, of course I'm going to be out here. That's my job. Not only am I rangering, but I just want to greet my members, right? They might've had a tough week at work, and they just want to say hi to you or something like that. Right. So little things like that. I would say you're going to want to change a lot, but, try and pick the most important things to change. And yeah, save some of those for year 2 and year 3, and add little things as you go here. Like this year, I'm adding a play with the Pro Series. The winning group is going to get there's going to be a $40 entry fee, and the winning group is going to get an all expenses paid trip to Quaker Ridge. An idea I stole from Tyler over at Fenway. He does something similar. Last year, I think he took the group over to Friar's Head, right? Winning group, and the pro that wins gets to go play. So that's something small that I'm adding this year. So, like I said before, change some things, but save some things for year 2, year 3, and moving forward.
No, that's great. Yeah. How about you, John? How'd you go about that? All right, maybe you, Pat, then.
Look at this guy, unbelievable. Same thing, kind of piggyback on Joe a little bit. You definitely don't, and I caught myself multiple times, and a couple of my good people here even said it. Pat, slow down, relax. I caught myself trying to change too much because, as I was saying earlier, it is so outdated here. And coming in with all the ideas that you've been building up, like myself, for years being here and knowing what needs to be done and what everybody's saying, and the younger generation, my generation, what they want to see. And, I definitely caught myself trying to change too much, but to kind of put it into perspective of where I am and kind of how you wouldn't believe, like, even though we are a public golf course, but in one of the most expensive towns in the country, it's so outdated. I clown around even, with everybody here and the guys next door. We're like in the 19th century, and, working for Joe, it's like how he was, but he had his ways, and he obviously did it something right for 32 years. So you can't knock him too much, but again, changing a cash register to a POS, if that's like where you're going at a facility, that's something similar. I upgraded my pull cart rentals, and they were blown away. Like, they thought it was the greatest thing, like small things like that. And, updated the range a little bit. It's an eyesore in my opinion. It's still not where I want it. I need the help with the town on that one. But like I said, the merchandise, the way the shop looks, it looks more like the way I want it to feel. Like you're walking into, I don't want you to feel like you're walking into like a Dick's Sporting Goods, the way it is, like a department store feel, like a PGA Superstore. I want you to feel, even though you're not at a country club, at a country club. So I got I asked for new carpet and to have the walls painted, and these people were like, oh my God, like I invented like the wheel or created fire. Like it was very easy for me for some small changes that you would just laugh at. But now that they like don't feel so much, a little embarrassed of the shop, it's certainly a lot nicer. Trying to get some new carts, and as you guys know, that's not the easiest thing, and people are wondering where the new carts are. So that's always a conversation that's a tough one to get, just because you can't get them. I was supposed to get them last year. Hopefully we'll get them this year. But changes like that. But yeah, playing with different groups, not just alienating all the other ones, and playing with one group, or the people, the good players, or just the men. Going on a ladies trip upstate to the casino to play the courses up there for 2 days, something that's never been done. There was always a group that always went to AC here, so gonna have different groups go to the Atlantic City Pro-Am, playing in Pro-Ams more. Being on the first tee visible, driving around the course, going to the range, just walking by the range, and it's just the small things, not just staying in the office or staying in the shop, being visible, being present. But that also comes with, well, if you're not there, well, where's Pat? Well, what's going on? Why isn't he here? He's always here. So you've got to just kind of, and you learn to balance that. You kind of pick and choose a little bit, but certainly you're going to want to change, especially if you're going into a place that hasn't been updated or changed, like mine, for for a long time. You're going to want to change a lot of things right away, but you've got to kind of also remember you want them to want more. So, in year 2, you got to have something in the back of your mind for 3 and 4. Hopefully, you're there. Something or someone I always looked up to, never worked for, but knew through Joe and Sean Garrity, who was here, very good friends, and a lot of connection. Tom Henderson was here in Greenwich, grew up right down, or I grew up right behind him over there in Glenville, and I would be at Round Hill a lot. I had a lot of connections over there, and something I always admired about Tom, I always felt like he was always reinventing himself, always had something new tech wise, or some kind of service or product to offer. It's something I picked up on, and it always kind of just reinventing yourself. So hopefully that's something I will be able to do. But just be careful. Don't change too much, because people, as you might even feel, you don't like change, especially an older generation to a newer one. Change is rough, change is tough, but you got to remember though, it's the circle of life. People, it's the way it works, out with the old, kind of in with the new and the younger and the different and the other ideas. So again, having a leg up being here, I kind of knew what people wanted, and I'm learning the boundaries of what I can ask for, what not to, who to talk to, who not to. So, you learn all that with, being there and being in the position. So just be careful, I'd say, because I was taking on too much. And my last thing I changed was a big junior program, with something that was very important to me. A little over our head with that one, but we nailed it. We killed it. The town loved it, and it already sold out. And it's January, February. We already sold out for a junior camp for the summer. That's never been done before. 5 weeks, 3 days a week. Again, something that made Joe a little nervous. Like, he goes, I didn't have the balls to pull that off. And, thankfully we got no rain. So we didn't have to worry about that, because they don't really have the facility where if we've got 30 kids, like, what do I do with them? Type of thing. Got very lucky there, but, take some chances, but not too big. And just be careful. Don't change, because then you're kind of stuck with year 2 and like, well, nothing's new. Everybody wants something new. Everyone wants something different. So I'd say just be careful with that. I caught myself. So just got to kind of slow it down.
Perfect. No, I think that's great. John, give us kind of, like you said, 38 years of Rod Loesch. What are we changing other than your background and your screen now?
And I'm not dealing with the dog, so I came outside. So 37 years. So when I went through the interview process, they kept bringing up the word culture, and I didn't know what they meant with it, so I kept digging deeper. They're just like any membership; they're reluctant to any change per se, but they were also going through this hiring process because they wanted change. So year 1 was a matter of me trying to figure out where I can start to change things up and move things around. And what I really focused on was, did I, first year, kind of like a honeymoon phase, ask for everything, whatever it costs, whatever you think you need, ask for it. Joe and I were talking about it, and in a year or 2, you could probably get a lot of stuff, that costs some money to upgrade at the club in year 1, 2, or maybe even 3. Specifically, like, we have a big renovation project going on, so we are spending a lot of money right now. So it kind of gets buried into that. But the biggest thing that I brought to the table was kind of alluding to like what Joe was talking about. The Rod was an old school pro, taught all day. Never really, he was just stuck on his lesson tee. And I play golf with members. I made it a point on every Saturday and Sunday morning. I'm usually on the first tee or driving range, saying good morning to everyone, watching them tee off. I make it a point to walk through the grill room between 12 and 2 and sit with every table and shake hands with every member. Something I learned as an assistant from Bobby Hines, who was at Old Oaks for 30 plus years, is it's good to have a friend at every table. Meaning don't play favorites, make sure you have a relationship with everyone. So, even from an internal standpoint, I made it a point to have a different relationship with my assistants and staff that worked at Connecticut Golf Club. The previous pro, didn't really, for what I've understood, didn't really understand necessarily to get to know any of the assistants or really see what they need or what they want and help them out. And I've made it a point to help my assistants, and just by starting a group chat on my phone with my staff was mind blowing. Saying that we had communication with everyone. Connecticut has, just like a lot of clubs, working at Old Oaks, they're also very reluctant to change, but bringing in Golf Genius, they never used Golf Genius. They did the old school way of kind of putting a handwritten scoreboard taped to the window in the grow room. So now converting that to Golf Genius and putting it on a 70-inch TV is, those are the things that you can do immediately that necessarily doesn't cost a lot to the club, but it makes you look like a genius. But I just think my personality, I when I got the job, like I literally made a laundry list of things I wanted to change, and you have to be realistic and prioritize those things, as we've alluded to. So, I changed the things that are easy to change. I also made a long-term plan of things that I wanted to do over the next 3 to 5 years. And I also, another strategy or another thing that I think is very important, and I guess it depends on the club, but I make it a point to at least have a few members, on the board or a golf committee, kind of just in tune of what my ideas are. Okay, I'm looking to do this. This is what it costs. Or, I try to make most of my decisions, especially that are based on the club, run through someone on the board or committee. That's just like a safety net. If a member starts to say, oh my God, why did we do this or do that? And I can always fall back a little bit on saying, well, I've discussed it at a board level and a committee level, and they were in support of it. A lot of times that kind of mutes the conversation. Obviously, I don't have to fill them in with internal things, but if I want to buy a new scoreboard and people say, wow, how much did we spend on that? Like, do we have money for that? John just came in and you guys hired and he's spending all this money. Yeah, but I was allocated X amount of dollars for things like that. So I just think, no matter where your job is, you're always going to want to put your little spin on something. Regardless if you get a head pro job that's at a club that's already really established. Connecticut was a little behind the times, so there was a lot of opportunity for me. If you get a job at a place that's pretty established, of a pro who is proactive, I'm sure there's still stuff you're going to want to change, but, take it as an opportunity, not as a painstaking task. Just by building the website, amazing. It's awesome. When the finished product's done, yeah, has it been a lot of work? Sure. But it's just more ammunition for the next time we have to renegotiate a contract or need some other stuff. It's just more things I can add to my list. When those difficult conversations come up, which I'm sure we're going to talk about briefly.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, John. I think we have 2 more points. We'll kind of cover this first one, I think, pretty briefly, and then the last one I think is pretty good just to hear for everyone. So just for all 3, year 1 versus year 2, how are you feeling going into it? Do you feel like it will be different? I know all of you have said it was pretty crazy going into year 1. So how do you feel kind of heading into this second year? We'll go with John again.
Yeah, year 1, I officially got the job at almost around the holidays, so it's called January 1. My head immediately began to spin. Just don't even know where to go first. Not that it's a bad thing, but just wow, this is it hits you for a minute going, I'm really the guy, okay, here we go. This is what you wanted to do. So now go for it. I think learning by getting thrown in the fire is also probably the best thing you can do. Coming from a PGM school, you can read all the PGA manuals you want until you get thrown in the fire. You don't know. But I would say that after year one is there's so many question marks, right? How are the members going to, you know, perceive you? How's the operation flow? What's your staff like? What's your employees like? What's your managers like? How is the board? How's the committees? Those are a lot of the questions, right? The easy stuff is like, how do you set up a member guest? I think we all got that covered, right? That we can set up a member guest, you know, so it's the other questions that are making you like stressed. Now coming into year two, having all of that under my belt, knowing the culture of the club and how people are and the busyness and the board and the committee, I think year two, for me personally, feels 50% less stressful. I actually probably have more things I'm doing, you know, as far as like stuff I'm trying to get ready, buying for the shop, you know, some tournament stuff. But the question marks of the actual club, I kind of have a gist of what's going on. And I also, you know, I know how the events ran, things I can change in the events. So that all stuff, that's such a relief to me going up, you know, for the spring. You know, everyone knows how I want the golf shop set up and, you know, entered in the POS system. You know, those are all things from day one. I mean, it's literally a clean slate. I walked in last year and we're like, okay, how do you want to set the discount, or how do you want to enter the SKUs in the POS system? It's different now. We're just going to pretty much start working and just kind of continue where we left off. So I think year two is way less stressful in a sense of the scary questions are answered. And if you talk to a lot of head pros, you know, in the section, I think overall, year after year, it becomes easier. I mean, I don't know if it's ever easy, but it becomes a little more easier because you get in tune to kind of the operation and quote unquote, you know, you want to get it on cruise control per se, where you kind of know the deal. Here's the tournaments, here's the schedule, you know, the operation, and you're ready to go.
Perfect. Thanks so much, John. How about you, Joe? How are you feeling?
Yeah, totally different feeling this winter than last winter. You know, last winter I was probably in the golf shop 24/7. Not literally, but you know, I'm working 9-hour days in the winter where normally I'm trying to plan my Florida trip. So not that it was a bad thing. I was looking forward to it, you know, trying to get everything set up to be successful in year one. But you know, now I can get away with coming in for 4 hours or taking 2 days off in a row and not having to come in and, you know, not having to stress out about setting up all the flyers for the tournaments that I had to make from scratch last year. You know, and just getting everything on 4T, setting all that stuff up, getting all the events set up in Golf Genius, just because, you know, you kind of want to do it the first time. You know, you could probably delegate that stuff, but in my situation, I wanted to do it first and then probably get to more of kind of a delegating position this year, just so I'd have a better understanding of it. Like I mentioned before, like getting to know the POS system and, you know, understanding how to use all of the different software programs that you have. So you have a better understanding so you can train that assistant who comes in later, right? You have to know how to use it to train someone. So definitely stress level is way down this year. Able to play a little bit more pickup basketball games at 12 o'clock during the week now at the YMCA. So happy to do that. I don't know if anyone follows me on Instagram, but you know, I definitely share my my passion for hoops. I was going to say one other thing. Yeah, like I mentioned, going into this year, I plan on becoming much more of a delegator. Probably easier said than done for me, you know, because I'm a workaholic. But you know, I need to get better at that and, you know, plan on delegating a little bit more to free up some more time for me.
Awesome. How about you, Pat?
Kind of similar to Joe there. Definitely, I'm looking forward to a little bit more delegating, but you have to go through those pains in year one. You need to learn everything. It's like cramming for a test. Like everything was crammed, thrown at you. Especially if you're coming in from an older standpoint and views on things. So I definitely am looking to delegate more and just have a little bit more breathing room. But you definitely, for, you know, this year, it's already a lot easier because you could just copy and paste a lot of those things that you couldn't do year one. So, you know, your scheduling, you know, the staffing, you know, the hours of operation here, you know, who you need on carts. For me, who you need to be outside. We don't have a cart barn. Yeah. Like who doesn't have a cart barn? Most do. So I've got to have someone out there making sure the carts are dried off. The driving range hours, when the kid's going to be here, like, because you don't know, you want to make sure that, you're servicing everybody and everybody feels like everything is operating smoothly, even though when it's not, you want everyone to, feel like it is and, see that it is. Because perception really is reality. So I know now the busy hours, I know that, coming from the busiest year that I think I'll have, just because the weather was amazing, as you all know, I'll know when to schedule people's hours because that all falls on me as well. But having a shop manager, going to give that duty to them, appointing somebody to be kind of in charge of the outside guys. I had somebody there. He left. He's going on to pursue different things. So he had that schedule for the guys outside that my former boss, micromanaged a lot. He wanted control of everything. I don't want to deal with the scheduling. So just having something like that fall on somebody else's plate is going to be great. Like I said, if I get one more teacher, someone that's looking to teach here, it's a very busy place, not a lot of responsibility in the shop. It's a fun spot. So if I get that one more instructor, life's just going to be that much easier. I'll have more breathing room, but again, a little bit different and unique. Sure, it's going to be a little easier transition into year 2, but the way that it's currently set up in the contract that I inherited, I have all the skin in the game. Everything. My deal here currently, not a town employee. I get no benefits. That's all on my own. I have to figure that out. Thankfully, I married somebody who came with great benefits. So I don't have that. I don't have a salary. So everything falls on me. So that stress is always going to be there no matter what, if it stays the way that it does with my contract. If we're closed, I'm screwed. I don't make any money. Where guys get salaries, nice salaries, that's great. But I get my money from teaching, the shop sales, some of the range and some of the carts. That's it. So I will always have that stress that we're not open or it's car path only. We're going to get less rounds because guys aren't going to take a cart. They're not going to play golf. So that hurts my pocket. Or, the range is terrible for this town to offer a product the way that it looks. Sorry, but it is. It drains awfully. So when it rains, balls plug, I can't get the roller out there to pick up the balls. Well, that comes out of my end. If I can't sell range balls, I'm not making money. So it's currently the way it is right now. Like I said, though, I have to earn my stripes and hopefully get the town to see that it's a very old, outdated contract, and hopefully they want me here and want me to be happy, just like I want them to be happy. So that's going to be an interesting one that I'm going to need to lean on people to talk about and discuss about renegotiating or how that is, because I am in year 2 of a 2-year with 3 1-year options coming up. So this will be my year to bring all those concerns to town hall and say, hey, listen, this is what I like, but that's it. Something that I need to get more educated on. So it's going to be me leaning on, fellow golf professionals to see how that's done, how it's done at a muni level. A deal that I have is so, weird. So asking guys or girls that have that background of an RFP or how you deal with the town. So that's going to be an interesting process at the end of this year. So it's going to be a little stressful, but I'm hoping nothing like the amount of stress I had in year 1, but it is what it is and you gotta handle it. So, we'll see.
Great. I think that kind of segues to kind of one of our last points here is contract negotiations. I know me going through it, it was a little stressful, and I would say probably one of the more uncomfortable things I've ever had to do is ask for more. And would love to kind of hear how you guys handled that and as a different part of it. Obviously, Pat, yours is a little different, but I'm sure you had some sort of negotiations. Well, we'll start with you, Pat. Let's do it.
Yeah, honestly, I did not. They said, here it is. Here it is. Sign it if you want it. So I had no say. You're looking at it and knowing what Joe was dealing with. I'm like, that's just not, it's not how business is done. It's like, I had a friend say to me, he goes, Jesus, you make a deal with Al Capone? Like the way that it is, it's just so one-sided. But it's so old, and it's just like everything here. It's just old. It's an outdated contract. I just found out yesterday, speaking of how outdated it is to put it in perspective, our irrigation system is operating on Windows 7. What are we at, 11? And when that breaks down, they were telling the town, they're like, listen, we don't have many parts left for this stuff. Like, it's just, I don't know why it is the way it is. There's a lot of red tape, but I had no experience with asking for more. I was, get my situation, get the job, earn your stripes, let them know, like, all right, this kid's for real. We need to, make some changes. We need to update it because the way things are, everyone's happy up there. As long as town hall is what I've learned, as long as town hall is not getting phone calls, they don't even know we exist. And thankfully with Joe, who had such a great track record, there, yeah, in 32 years, getting no complaints, real complaints down to town hall. They leave you alone. As long as they're not getting phone calls, I am learning. Their biggest concern is the calls down to the first selectman's office and the Parks and Rec. If they're not getting calls, everything is great. So I'm hoping, again, I came from that track record. I got through year one without any issues, made a great changes that people loved. So hopefully I will have, hey, listen, these are my expenses. This is crazy. I need some help. It's just so one-sided that, it makes me nervous because my expenses are going up. I have to pay the gas on the carts. That went up another $400 out of my pocket for profit next year. Every year it goes up 3% for my rent. As you guys know, I have to pay for, driving range stuff and the shop. Your expenses go up, your margins aren't changing. My price is going up. So I've got a Pro Vs are now $55 here for me. They went up another $5. I sell them. I have to sell them at MAP. It's not, I can't sell things at suggested, which some places can. So my cost keeps going up. The cost for things going up. I have to sell it for higher, but my margins aren't changing. I'm going to constantly feel like I keep just kind of treading water, barely keep my head afloat. And I watched that for years here. So hopefully I will learn from you guys and people that have experienced this and leaning on Jonathan Gold, because it's all new to me. I have no idea what it takes to renegotiate. So it's going to be an eye-opening, uncomfortable experience, but you gotta believe in yourself and you gotta back to your brand and your product, what you're selling them. So you gotta sell yourself and tell them why you deserve what you feel you deserve and to be compensated for.
Awesome. How about you, Joe?
So contract negotiations are awkward. I definitely recommend asking for help. As soon as I got my contract, the first person I called was Michael Breed. I worked for him for 3 years. That guy, is very, very business savvy and very smart when it comes to stuff like that. He probably gave me some things to ask for that I felt uncomfortable asking for, and I didn't, right? But I took a lot of great points from him. I asked for a lot of help. I sent the contract to Patrick Cedar from GBN. I'm a GBN member. I asked Jonathan Gold for help. The thing about, like, when you get the job, if you're lucky enough to get the job, like, as soon as they send you the contract, right? Most of the time, like for me, I was like blown away. I was like, I love it. I'll sign this right now. But that's what you can't do that. Obviously, you have to go through the fine print and just make sure everything is right for you. Like, one big thing that the first time I glanced through the contract, I didn't even pick up on is I had to pay one golf shop employee. or whoever like manages my golf shop. I was responsible for payroll. I was responsible for, all the taxes that get involved with that. And it just didn't make sense to me. It was like, you're going to make me go through all of this like extra work just for one person. So what I negotiated in the contract was the club's going to handle all that. They're going to put them on their payroll and I'll reimburse the club. So I pay the club. That way I don't have to deal with all the little things that you have to deal with. Like, so that was huge. That probably saved honestly a lot of my time, and something like that helps me. It also helps the members, because that gives me more time to service them. Two other things that were huge were negotiating the golf shop loan. I had, of course, I had money saved up, maybe money invested that I didn't want to touch. That worst case scenario I could have touched, right? But most of these clubs will offer you some sort of loan, whether it's interest free, or it's got some sort of interest rate. Obviously, interest rates right now are kind of through the roof, but I negotiated, $50,000 loan. I asked for 100, just because I thought that was the number, but I've got a tiny shop here, so they gave me 50, and that was plenty. They negotiated with me at the standard interest rate through their bank, which was Webster Bank, but at the end of the day, they didn't make me pay any interest on it. So it was a win-win. And also, I could accept that loan going into year 2. I think I'm okay. I think I've got enough cash flow in the business, but that's something that you got to negotiate in your contract. And then last but not least, when Dan called me, when he was negotiating his contract, I told him, check the credit books. A lot of the members, a lot of head pros, right, their credit books will expire at the end of the year. That wasn't the case here. So there was like $13,000 in members' credits, and there was nothing about credit books in the contract. Like, yeah, maybe if I discovered it after I signed the contract, I'm sure the club would have did the right thing, but you never know. So I had to, when I bought the golf shop merchandise, I don't know, there was like maybe $25,000, $20,000 inventory in here. Whatever the credit book number was, they subtracted that. So I only had to pay about $10,000. So, all little things, but just at the end of the day, if you're lucky enough to get the job, make sure that you have a person to call that can look it over for you. That's been through that, because that's really important.
Great. How about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, the long story short, not to drag this on any longer, but negotiating the contract is probably the most awkward, difficult thing that you'd probably do during this process. Listen, it's not comfortable asking for money, for compensation. It's, you got to be confident. You have to have facts. When I took the job, they literally sent me a sheet. My contract isn't overly elaborate. I had the punch list, okay, salary, benefits, all that stuff. And, I had to go back and forth a couple times to negotiate some stuff. I was fortunate, no different than what they were saying. You got to have someone that is a current head pro, or someone who is able to deal with contracts, especially in the golf business, to bounce it off of, just to make sure you're not asking for something unreasonable. And if you have facts behind it, I mean, and you're prepared, no different than any other part of the interview process, it can be worked out. You can't just say, I want $20,000 more on my salary. And okay, why? I don't know, because I think I want more money. You have to come up with a reason why that number is the number, so yeah, the contract negotiation is unique to everybody. Every club offers different packages. It's good to reach out to head pros you're comfortable with. I'm fine reaching, if you ask me directly what my contract says, I'm fine sharing it with you when you're going through that process. I've spoken to Dan, with his, and Joe, and, especially like Joe was just a little ahead of me. So when I got offered the job, I called Condo and said, are we in the same ballpark? Just to see what he was offered, just so I have some leverage. That's another way of looking at it. It's a leverage thing. So you get offered a job. Well, if the 6 local head pros around you are at X and they're here, not saying that, obviously they're going to be there for longer periods of time, but you can have an idea where you should start. And you also have to remember one thing. although the people at all of our clubs are very smart in whatever they do, their finance, if they're real estate, most of them don't know anything about the golf business or the golf industry or what golf pros make. I had a pro that was there for 37 years. They didn't have a clue what other clubs were paying and doing with their pros. So I had to show them some statistics from area clubs of what these guys' contracts were like. So again, be prepared. It's not a comfortable thing. It's just a way of life, but you know, you get through it pretty easily. And once you sign that line, it hits you hard. Like, okay, I'm the guy.
Very cool. I can kind of open it up if anyone has any questions in the chat, and if they don't, then we can kind of let these guys go. It was great to spend time with them. How about one other thing while we maybe wait? Is there anything you would change after that first year? Any decisions you made, that maybe weren't the right things, or maybe you got a little too ahead of yourselves? I'll let whoever wants to go there.
I don't think there's anything I want to change. I was just thankful that, a couple people said, Pat, slow down, going a little too quick, just, pace yourself. So that was great to hear. Cause like I said, you get your job. If you're fortunate enough to get the job, and you know how hard they are to get, it's just like, you're just so excited. And you just gotta kind of catch yourself and like, all right, yes, it's something that, I always wanted my whole life growing up here. It's like literally a dream come true, that kind of feeling. Like, but you just, there's nothing I want to change that I would take back. I was very happy with what transpired for year one. Because I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I learned that I could literally handle anything. I mean, bring it on. It doesn't faze me now when things don't go your way and you've got the busiest facility in the area, and I'm just like, all right, it's those life lessons are so valuable, and it's like I feel like I can honestly getting through all those hurdles. They're big. Like that was a lot to handle. Like, okay, how bad can year two be? So it's like, bring it on. Can't wait. I just hope it doesn't rain. That's literally every day. I'm like, just don't rain or have snow in April. Like I need this place to be open. That's all, I could say. I'm just very, very thankful looking back at it for the headaches, the stress. But when you're in that moment, you're not. But there's a lot of guys on here that can kind of attest to that are head pros. Like it's okay. You'll get through it. You'll get through it. It's just, you figure it out, like you got to figure it out. And you will.
Anyone have anything else there?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I don't think anything necessarily changing. There's adjustments, just like any business or any job. I mean, tournament schedule, format, schedule of an event, because there's a lot of things that you go through as a year one that you don't have the ability to make the decision until you go through it. And then year two, okay, well, that's not going to work that way. So let's do it this way. But yeah, I mean, the major stuff, you just figure it out as you go, just like anything else in life. You hope you don't make, you hope you don't make a decision that was, creating some waves at the club to where you got to backpedal and an issue that you hope you don't. But that's why you got to lean on peers and friends. And, I reached out to plenty of pros throughout the year saying, hey, how did you set up this? Or, do you have that? Or, you can't try to take it all on yourself. You got to rely on the connections you've made as an assistant and being in the business.
I would change ordering your golf carts from associates before the season starts, so you don't have to call Pat Massi and get him to ship 20 carts over for an outing you have.
That's what you do. You handle it, right? Figure it out. You
For
run
those of
out of
you that-
carts,
Oh, if
figure
need
it
to
out.
get-
You call me, you got a flatbed over here, but you know, it was good. It shows them that, you've got people that you can lean on, and all of a sudden you got carts when your club thought you couldn't get carts.
Well, that's
Yeah.
actually true. I thought about putting scuba gear on and going to get range balls in the pond because I had 3-year-old range balls, and every company was brutal with range balls last year, and they were like Nerf balls by the end of the year. They're peeling off as you were hitting them. They sounded like birds when you hit them. So that was the stressful part of trying to get range balls. And then they finally got 2,000 dozen in October, just in time to put them in a storage shed. So that was about it.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone who was on the call, and thank you to Joe, Pat, and John. I got a lot of info there, and especially for, like they said, for someone like me stepping into the role I am, it's really great to hear from them. Just a couple of housekeeping things from the education committee. We have a great presentation next Tuesday with Sam Wiley about creating a culture. And then next Friday, we have it with Michael Breed. He's actually having 12 people in studio at his place. I think I'm pretty sure it's same time, Friday at 10. So if you'd like to register for that, please do online. But thanks again to our 3 head pros, and look forward to seeing everyone soon.